At 3 a.m., a man with crushing migraines paces a rented room in Turin, half-blind, unemployed, almost entirely alone, yet he is preparing to accuse all of civilization of living by borrowed values. He believes most people don't actually choose what they call good. They inherit it, obey it, hide inside it. And if he's right, then some of your deepest convictions may not even be yours. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. The world Friedrich Nietzsche entered was a world of collapsing certainties. God, for many educated Europeans, was no longer intellectually secure. Science was advancing. Industrial society was rearranging human life. Old aristocratic orders were weakening, democratic ideals were rising, and morality itself was starting to look less eternal and more historical. This was not just a political shift, it was a psychological earthquake. Nietzsche saw something most people still avoid seeing. When old foundations crack, people do not become free overnight. They become anxious. They rush to replace one authority with another, religion with ideology, tradition with public opinion, conscience with algorithms, priests with influencers. They call this progress. Sometimes it is. Often it is just dependence wearing modern clothes. And Nietzsche was the perfect witness for this crisis because he lived it in his own body. He had been a brilliant classical philologist, appointed a professor in his 20s. Then illness dismantled his career. He wandered from city to city, writing books few people read, suffering headaches, nausea, isolation, and the humiliating sense of speaking to an age that did not want to listen. What he wrote next changed everything. He asked a devastating question: what if morality is not a divine command or a rational fact, but a human creation? And if that's true, then who created your values? This is where Nietzsche enters modern philosophy like a thunderclap, not because he gave people comforting life lessons. He didn't. He shattered illusions. He suggested that behind our noble words, justice, humility, duty, compassion, there are often hidden drives, struggles for dominance, fears of vulnerability, resentments against strength, and the desperate need to make weakness look virtuous. Now, before you dismiss him as cynical, stay with this. Nietzsche was not saying kindness is fake or that all morality is a scam. He was asking a harder question: what forces gave birth to the values you trust? And here's the tension at the heart of everything he wrote. If inherited values are weakening, then either you create your own values or someone else will do it for you. That is the real meaning of Nietzsche's will to power. And it is not what most people think. Most people hear will to power and imagine domination, dictators, conquest, control, ego. That reading is shallow. Nietzsche's idea is more unsettling because it is more intimate. The will to power is not just the desire to rule others. It is the fundamental drive of life to expand, shape, interpret, overcome, create form, and turn chaos into meaning. Listen to the way Nietzsche puts it: where I found the living, there I found will to power, and even in the will of the servant, I found the will to be master. That line should stop you. Even the person who appears obedient may still be trying to gain power through guilt, manipulation, moral superiority, passive resistance, victimhood, or the ability to define what others should feel ashamed of. And here's where most people get it wrong. Power is not always loud. Often it whispers. The need to control a room with moral language is still a need for control. The desire to be seen as pure, right, compassionate, enlightened, this too can become a strategy of power. Nietzsche forces us to ask a brutal question. When you say you believe something, do you believe it because it is true or because it gives you a position? That question is why Nietzsche still feels dangerous in the age of social media. We live in a culture obsessed with performance. We curate identities, signal virtues, join tribes, and call it authenticity. But if your values exist mainly to win approval, avoid criticism, or secure belonging, are they values or survival tactics? This is where Nietzsche differs sharply from both popular self-improvement culture and the softer versions of modern Stoicism floating around online. Stoic philosophy, at its best, teaches discipline, inner freedom, and clarity about what is in your control. There is immense ancient wisdom there, but Nietzsche would warn that even discipline can become another mask if it is only obedience to a ready-made ideal. In other words, Stoic philosophy asks, can you master yourself? Nietzsche asks, who decided what that self should become? That second question is explosive. And here's the counterintuitive claim. Nietzsche is not telling you to abandon morality. He is telling you to take responsibility for it, to stop treating values as furniture inherited with the house, to examine them, test them, and ask whether they make life smaller or greater. Because some values protect life, others suffocate it. Some produce courage, generosity, creativity, and resilience. Others produce dependency, resentment, conformity, and disguised hatred of excellence. And Nietzsche believed entire moral systems can emerge not from strength, but from weakness reacting against strength. But there's something even more shocking. He thought your suffering itself could become raw material for self-creation. Nietzsche did not romanticize comfort. In fact, he distrusted it. He saw that what most people call a good life is often just a safe life, a managed life, an approved life, a life too frightened to offend the herd. And here comes one of his most famous lines: "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." That is not a motivational poster. It is a philosophical diagnosis. If your life is held together by borrowed values, then difficulty will shatter you because you won't know what your suffering is for. But if you have authored a purpose, if your values are lived, tested, chosen, then pain stops being meaningless friction and becomes part of the shaping process. This is where it gets controversial. A comfortable society does not automatically produce strong human beings. In fact, too much comfort can make people morally fragile, psychologically brittle, and spiritually dependent. That statement will irritate people, and maybe it should, but look around. We have more convenience than ever, yet anxiety, emptiness, and identity confusion are everywhere. Why? Because removing hardship is not the same as creating meaning. Nietzsche's answer is not cruelty. It is transformation. He wants you to stop asking, "How do I avoid struggle?" and start asking, "What is this struggle making possible?" That shift changes everything. And yes, there is overlap here with ancient wisdom. Stoic philosophy teaches that obstacles can train character. Modern Stoicism often repeats this as a life lesson. The obstacle is the way. Nietzsche would agree only partially. He would say the deeper issue is not merely enduring adversity with grace. It is using adversity to create a higher form of yourself that did not exist before. That is a much more demanding vision. It means you cannot hide forever behind labels, trauma, or inherited identities. Your history matters, your wounds matter, but at some point, Nietzsche insists, they must become material, not destiny. So what does this look like in practice? It means auditing your values with ruthless honesty. Which of your beliefs came from fear? Which came from the need to be liked? Which came from resentment toward people who dared to risk more than you? Which came from genuine admiration for life, excellence, depth, and courage? It means noticing where you play small and then call it virtue. Sometimes what people praise as humility is just fear of being seen. Sometimes what they call contentment is surrender. Sometimes what they call kindness is the refusal to tell the truth. Do you really believe your values are yours if they have never cost you anything? And Nietzsche's answer, again and again, is that a human being becomes real not by fitting in, but by overcoming, not once, repeatedly. Now we reach Nietzsche's most radical move. The will to power is not only the drive to survive, compete, or resist. At its highest level, it becomes creation. The strongest person in Nietzsche's sense is not the one who merely dominates others. It is the one who can give style to their character, reinterpret suffering, and affirm life without needing the universe to justify itself first. Listen to this line: to impose upon becoming the character of being, that is the supreme will to power. In plain language, life is flux, chaos, change, loss, contradiction, nothing stays still. The will to power, at its highest, is the ability to shape this flowing instability into a coherent form, to create meaning where none is handed to you. That is why Nietzsche matters so much in modern philosophy. He understood a problem that defines our age. Once old certainties die, freedom becomes terrifying, because freedom is not just permission, it is burden. If no cosmic script guarantees your role, then you must write one. And if you refuse, you don't remain neutral. You get written by the crowd. This is why Nietzsche admired artists so deeply, not just painters or composers, but creators in the larger sense, people who transform experience into form. To create your own values is an artistic act performed on the raw material of your life. And here is the emotional peak of the whole idea. Your identity is not something you uncover like a buried artifact. It is something you forge. That single insight can rearrange the way you see yourself, because maybe you have spent years asking the wrong question. Not "who am I really?" as if your truest self was sitting untouched beneath the layers, but "what am I becoming through what I repeatedly affirm?" That is a much harder question. It gives you less comfort and more responsibility. Now bring in Nietzsche's most famous demand: become who you are. People hear that and imagine self-expression, authenticity. Personal branding. Nietzsche means something fiercer. Becoming who you are is not indulging every impulse. It is disciplining your chaos into form. It is selecting, rejecting, shaping, and ordering your drives until your life has a style that could only be yours. This is also where Nietzsche parts ways with shallow rebellion. Rejecting society's values does not automatically make you free. Teenagers do that. Algorithms do that. Contrarians do that. Real freedom is harder. It requires the strength to create values that are life-giving, self-authored, and durable enough to survive solitude. And yes, there is danger here. Nietzsche can be misread as permission for selfishness, narcissism, even cruelty. Many have tried. But that reading misses the central demand of his philosophy: self-overcoming, not self-indulgence, not domination for its own sake, overcoming pettiness, overcoming dependency, overcoming the need for external permission, overcoming the parts of you that would rather obey than become. So ask yourself this: if every inherited script fell away, your tribe, your labels, your reputation, your fear of judgment, what would you still choose to honor? What would you build your life around if applause disappeared? That is Nietzsche's challenge: not to destroy value, but to create it consciously. To become a source, not just a vessel. Go back to that room in Turin. The man pacing in pain, nearly unread, writing as if he was speaking to a future century. He knew his question would outlive him because it is not just a 19th century question. It is yours. What values govern your life right now? Are they chosen or absorbed? Do they make you more alive, more courageous, more honest? Or do they keep you acceptable, manageable, harmless? And here's the part most people will avoid. Creating your own values sounds liberating until you realize it removes your excuses. If your life is being shaped by fear, resentment, envy, passivity, or the need for approval, Nietzsche will not let you hide behind society, your upbringing, or the times. He asks what you are doing with what you have been given. So try this for 7 days. Write down one belief you live by each morning, about success, love, work, truth, strength, kindness, ambition, failure. Then ask 3 questions. Where did this come from? Who benefits if I keep it? Does it make my life larger or smaller? You may find that some of your most respectable values are just inherited anxieties. You may find that what you call maturity is caution, that what you call morality is fear of disapproval, or you may discover something stronger, principles you would keep even if no one rewarded you for them. Those are the beginnings of a self. This is not a rejection of wisdom. It is a deeper encounter with it. Ancient wisdom, Stoic philosophy, modern Stoicism, all of it can become useful if it becomes living material rather than borrowed identity. Philosophy is not supposed to decorate your mind. It is supposed to alter the way you stand in the world. So yes, read the sages, learn the life lessons, study self-improvement, but then go further. Test everything. Refuse second-hand meaning. Build a character that could survive both praise and loneliness. Most people will spend their entire lives avoiding this truth. Will you become the author of your own values?